So let me then tell you how this, or let me just discuss with the class how this should be done. Okay, so uh, what you're asking about is this particular generation, right? So you're doing using language model to generate, and what I was generating, I want to eat Chinese food. Right? And your question is, oh, how am I doing this generation, right? How am I doing this generation? So first of all, how am I even putting this word I? So I have the start token. Let's say I have the start token. I am starting to generate a sentence. Right. I have to start with the start token, fine. And now I have to go to the next word. I have to generate the next word. How should I generate the next word? And what I have written is as per the probabilities. Right? As per the probabilities. So I can say, uh, so my bigram is probability word given the start token. Word given the start token. Now, how many different W's are possible here? What are different number of W's that are possible? Yeah, Saurav, you can answer.
Yes, so all the tokens.
All the words in my vocabulary, right? Let's say there are V words in my vocabulary. So all V words are possible. So this is a distribution of dimension V. V dimension probability distribution, right? And this will add up to 1. Okay. Now I have to choose a word from here. Now, this is what we call as sampling. So I have to sample a word from here. As per the probabilities, how do you do that sampling? How would you sample a word from this distribution as per the probabilities?
So we take the one with the highest probability that we have in our uh, training set.
No, no. You just want to sample a word from this distribution and you are given the probabilities, right? So while you are sampling, you want to ensure that, okay, if I do sufficient number of samples, right? So number of times I will take a word will be proportional to its probability. That's all. It doesn't mean that you will take the word with the highest probability. So, so otherwise you will only take the word with the maximum probability. And then that means you can only generate one single sentence. Is that correct, Sarah? If I choose the word with the highest probability, I cannot generate more than one sentence.
Yes, sir. That's good.
Yes, because then what will happen? I will take the maximum probability for the start token. They will be deterministic, right? Single word. Again, it has a probability distribution after that. I take the maximum probability, and that is all determined. I can only generate a single sentence. I cannot use it to create new sentences. Right? So this is not, yeah, this can tell you what is the sequence with the maximum probability, right? If this is the question, you will use this method. Take the word with the maximum probability. But you have to generate sentences, right? So you don't do that. You want to just sample. You want to just sample the words respecting the probability distribution. How would you do that? So maybe, yeah, if sort of, not sort of, anyone else can answer. Let's say there are just 5 words in my vocabulary and they have probability 0.01, 0.5, 0.2, 0.71, so 2, 91, 0.09. Okay, there are 5 words with these probabilities for this python. I want to sample a word. How would I do that? Okay, so yeah, to make people speak, there are bonus marks for people who will answer questions during the interaction session. Now someone should answer. So any TA present here can take a note who are the people who are answering. Yeah.
Sure, sir.
Sir, one thing we can do is we can take mean probability and around the fixed plus minus delta range, we can select a sample from at random.
In this case, how will you do that? In this case, what would you do? I have given you a situation. There are 5 words with these probabilities. Right? I want to sample a word. Give me an algorithm for doing that.
One can be, let's say, take the cumulative probabilities. So it should be 0.01, 0.51, 0.71, 0.91, and 1. Then we will randomly pick a number between 0 and 1, and we will see where does it lie. So that would we can pick them.
Okay, Shiva, very good. So what you're saying is very simple. You just put them in a cumulative probability distribution. So 0.01, 0.51, 0.71, 0.91, and 1. Fine. Now you randomly pick a number between 0 and 1. Okay, and randomly it will have equal probability of lying anywhere. And suppose that number comes out to be 0.4. Okay, if it is 0.4, which one you will choose? You will choose the second
The
one.
second word, which is having 0.5 as the probability.
Yeah. So you have just taken the cumulative probabilities. 0.01 up to 0.01, you will choose first word. And from here up to 0.51, you will choose second word. Up from here up to 0.71, third word, 0.91, fourth word, and up to 1.0, fifth word. So you have the intervals. And also what has happened now, because intervals are according to their probabilities. So if you get that random value between 0.01 to 0.51, anywhere, you will choose second word. So second word has a probability of being picked with 0.5, right? And the third word has a probability of being picked with 0.2 and so on. So they have probabilities associated now. So, and this respects the original probability distribution, and it solves the problem that that Saurabh you were mentioning. Because now, because you will just randomly choose a value, you may even choose this. Right? Randomly, you may even choose this. So you can now generate new and new sentences. Okay. So Saurabh, does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Okay, sure. Any other question from the lectures that I had shared?
So, but that may not be a good sentence. It means like it can be anything. It can be a random sentence. It can be a random sentence as well if we keep doing that because of the low probability.
Yes, very good point, valid point. It will be a random sentence. But you see, the sentences that are more likely to be generated. Yes. But it's just that it's not restrictive. It's not that you will always pick the word with the maximum probability. You can pick the word with the second max probability. You may pick the word with the third max probability, right? And the probability with which you would pick a very rare word is also very rare. So it may happen if you are generating like a million sentence, you may generate a sentence that is like really, really random. Yes, that's all.
So why don't we keep choosing the top k probabilities every time, and we make a tree-like structure, and then we'll get many number of sentences?
Very good. You can do that. You can do that. There are actually sampling methods that do that. So there are actually sampling methods that do that. So for example, when it comes to greedy, no, sorry, it's beam search based decoding. We will come back to that. There you do that. You just take the few uh, top few results from top few probability values, and then you choose that. Then you again generate. There's another sampling method where you choose only top words that together combine to make a probability of say 0.5 or 0.6, and you leave the others. So there are other sampling methods. So very good, Aditya. So yeah, so please remind me. I'll come to that later. Right now I'm just giving you a very simple sampling method, but yes, we will come to these methods.
Sure.
Okay, other questions?
Sir, hello.
Yes.
So, but in that case, it won't give zero probability for which we are using smoothing. If there is a probability that, I mean, that won't be zero then, because there is a probability that the it can choose the word.
I didn't understand that. We use smoothing only to compute probability for a test sentence, right? So this is only for test sentence, because at test time it may happen that you get a word that you have never seen in training. Now, because it has zero probability, I mean after bigram or trigram, whatever you take, if you actually take the original probabilities, the overall probability of the sentence or the perplexity, these things start becoming zero, or yeah, these things are no more valid. So you will get zero probability. So that's where we say, okay, we use some smoothing and we do some approximation there. But here we are talking about generating a sentence. Yes, we are generating a sentence. So,
So, like we are using Shannon visualization for finding the next word. Like we have denied the allegations, denied the reports, and now we are looking for in our test data what will come after denied the. So, but when we are searching, there is a probability that offer can come after the, or maybe offer is present in the test data. So it can
yeah,
come
that's
with
what
some
I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Your generator, your language model generator, is restricted by whatever it has seen in the training data. Right? It doesn't know what new. It cannot create new words. It is restricted by whatever it has seen during training. Right? So it cannot create a new word if it has not seen that. What we were saying in test data, if you see a new word, there is a way you can approximate the probability by using some smoothing. That's how we were saying. But when you have to generate, that time you are restricted by whatever you have seen in the training. So if you have not seen a word at all, you won't be able to generate that.
But any word can come after denied the, right? Not offer, but anyone else, because we are using like this in the cumulative frequency method. So any word we can select any word, so it has some probability.
Okay, now I understand your question. So you are saying something different. Okay, now I understand. So you are saying in my training data, suppose, okay, now let me just use a new page. Actually take your question. So you said denied the. Okay, and yeah, I understand now. So you are saying I have V words in my vocabulary, and I'm taking probability of W given after coming after denied the. Yes, and W is any word in my vocabulary. Now what you're saying, some words have zero probability and some words have high. Let's say these four words have all the probability mass, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, everything else is 0. Now, if I use the method that I am telling, you will only be able to generate one of these 4 words. That's your question, right? But it may happen
Yes.
some other word is also possible after generating that. Okay, see, that's where before doing the generation, if you want to take care of that part, you have to first do a smoothing here. You should do a smoothing on this distribution. So suppose you do add one smoothing or something. So after you do smoothing, then what would happen? You will not have zero massage. They will have some non-zero mass. So it will be some 1 by V or so, something like that. 1 by V plus something. So V plus something and so. So you will have some mass in all the words. So they will all come to non-zero then after you do a smoothing. And then you apply the method that I was discussing and you will be able to generate everything. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, good question. Okay. Any other questions?
Is smoothing really required in this case?
Is smoothing really required in this case? Yes, is smoothing really required in this case? That's a question generally. And the answer would be generally yes. Generally, we do smoothing before doing the generation. So smoothing is required. Of course, you may not do add one smoothing. There are other smoothing methods that we test. For example, at least you can do unigram prior smoothing. That is good. So I won't say like a generic yes and no answer. Smoothing is always done or smoothing is not done. But we are talking of a very specific case that you want to do a generation. You want to do generation of text generation using our n-gram language models, text generation using n-gram language models. And depending on your application, you may want to say, okay, I want to be very, very specific to the data that I have seen. I don't want to diverge a lot from this. Then you will say, okay, I won't do smoothing at all. I'll just try to generate things that I have seen in the data. But if you want to say, okay, fine, I have seen something in the data, but I don't want to be restrictive, then you should use one of the smoothing methods and try to generate text. Otherwise, as Saurav rightly pointed out, you will not be able to generate new n-grams. You will only generate n-grams that you have seen earlier. But how do you generate new n-grams? So smoothing there will help you. So there's no fixed yes or no answer. Depending on an application, you can choose either not do smoothing or do smoothing, but both will work finally. So you will get different types of text.
So,
And
but this may lead to sentences which are grammatically incorrect too, right?
So that will happen. That will always happen. That will always happen. If you use language model or any model for generating text, you will get sentences that are grammatically incorrect, and that is a very huge problem. That is a very huge problem. So we are never claiming that we will generate at the end grammatically correct sentences. This claim has never been made. We will try to mimic what has been seen in the data, but the final outputs can be grammatically incorrect. They can be like incorrect in so many ways, not only grammatical. So they may have so many problems. I'll show some example if I get time today. I'll show some examples. What are the common errors we get with neural language models? So don't expect that you will get grammatically correct sentences.
Sir, what about transformer architecture? Like it is shown that it can generate grammatically correct sentences, but is it always the case?
No, it's not. It's not always the case. It generates to a much better extent than other models, right? So we will come to transformers. Today we will possibly go to a neural language model. At some point of time, the lecture will come to transformers and see what are the limitations that transformers would have. Yeah. It's not guaranteed. Okay. Even suppose you can guarantee that for English by using like a billion, like billion word or trillion word corpus, but what would happen if you go to other languages? How would you guarantee that it is grammatically correct? So yeah, so it's not guaranteed. Maybe in a very specific case, for a very specific domain, you may guarantee because it has seen sufficient examples, but in general, you cannot.
No, actually, so since I was doing it randomly, so the chances of selecting the grammatically incorrect sentences are more in this case while generating a sentence, basically.
See, you're not doing randomly. You are doing as per the probabilities. Okay, so you're not doing randomly. It is just that you are allowing all the words. So of course, there is a chance of getting grammatically incorrect things, but the chances are low. Chances are low.
Sir,
Mhm.
uh,
Yes.
for like small range dependencies in sentence, we can say like n-gram model is sufficient and like useful enough. Similarly, for long range dependencies, do we have any language model?
Yeah, we will come to that neural language models. We will discuss that. So we will take those. Yes. Okay. Any other question?
So how do we know the count of words in the vocabulary? Is it the number of words in the training, or is it the combined of training and testing?
You have to define your corpus from which you are taking your vocabulary. Say it can be your Wikipedia data or some other data, whatever data you take. And from there, you will get the unique words. So in the first week, we have defined some type token, right? So what are the unique words there? What are the number of types in that corpus? And that will be your vocabulary. Now that time you have a choice. Suppose you get your vocabulary and that is of size, say 1 million, right? And you find that this is too huge. I don't want to work with a vocabulary of 1 million. It can happen. You may have so many arbitrary spelling mistakes and all. So you will say, okay, no, I don't want to work with so many. I will say, okay, I will only choose, say, 500,000 words with the highest frequency. And that becomes your vocabulary. So your vocabulary is something you define um, based on the unique words that you find in your data, in your original uh, data with which you are training your language model, for instance. So you define that. And as I'm saying, it may not be always the unique number of words because that can be very, very large in cases. So then that time you might have to restrict to some words with the higher frequency. Say I will take all the words that have at least occurred at least 5 times in the corpus. And that might remove some spelling mistakes already because the spelling mistakes are generally rare. Okay.
So, sir,
Any other question? Yes.
if if the size of vocabulary is, let's say we have 5 words in the vocabulary and 2 of them occurred in the training data and 3 of them did not occur. So in case of smoothing,
No.
will
Vocabulary is what you are defining from your training data itself. You are not, you don't know what will happen in the test time. You're defining it based on your training data.
okay, thank you, sir.
Because you see, even if you know what will happen in test data, right? And if you even if you include those words in your vocabulary, what will you do with those? You cannot get any estimate, any probability from the training data. So there is no use even to know that okay, these words are there in the test data. It does not help you. You cannot get any statistics from the training data. So you define it from the training data that you get. Other words become your out of vocabulary. You just call them out of vocabulary, whatever has not been seen, or whatever is not in your vocabulary.
Yes, sir, that was my concern.
Sure. Okay, other questions? Sure. So a quick quiz on transliteration or translation.
Sir,
Okay.
hello, sir.
Yes. Okay,
Sir,
I'm
if
just doing this quiz and then I'll take your question. Okay. Just a quick quiz and then I'll take your question. So I think Rishit asked this question earlier about transliteration, correct? What happens in transliteration? So think about a language. So this is a Georgian language. Okay. So this is how you're writing the name of the countries. So this is for Peru, this is for Uruguay, this is for Brazil. You're writing in this language. Now you have to tell what are these two countries in English. What are these two countries? So for example, in Hindi, we say Japan, right? And that is Japan.
So Argentina.
So this is, okay, that was quick. Argentina. I don't know if it is correct. Yes.
Colombia.
Colombia. Okay. Any other answers, or does that look fine?
Sir, Paraguay.
Paraguay. Which one, first or second?
I guess the second one, but now that I see it, I maybe, sir, the second one. Okay, yeah, maybe the second.
Okay. So by the way, this character and this characters are different. They are not the same. Okay. They are not identical. You might be thinking they are same. They are not identical. Okay. They are
Okay.
different. Any other answers? Okay, so now I'll ask the persons who gave the answer. So who told Argentina?
So I was
Saurabh.
Saurav. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and who told Colombia?
Sir, I'm Ankit.
Ankit. Okay, sure. So yeah, Saurav or Ankit, and Saurav, you can tell. Why do you think this is Argentina?
So the first character is matching with uh, like Uruguay
This?
in A. Yeah, Brazil and
Yeah,
Uruguay A.
yeah,
And the
yeah.
second character is matching with Brazil R.
Okay, and these two characters were sufficient for guess, right?
And the
Okay.
last is also A.
Last one is again matching with A.
And
Yeah,
also
last one is A. Yeah.
and G is also matching with Uruguay G.
Oh yes, G is also matching. Yeah, ARG and last is A. So this is sufficient for guess. Good. And yeah, Ankit, how did you get this Colombia?
Sir, like IL was in the Brazil end, and the first name came into mind to me in the last character where IL comes is Colombia, the South America. So that's how I guessed it. In the Brazil, last two characters are IL. So
No, but Colombia does not have IL.
IL, sir.
Yeah, Colombia does not have IL. The L is matching. So this
No,
L is
sir.
matching. Mhm.
So Brazil ends with a L, right? But Argentina also ends with the same character that is there in Brazil.
So yeah, this is where it's not just a one-to-one mapping. You see, now I'll come to this. What is the crux here? So how do you write China in Hindi?
Chin,
Chin,
Chin, right? You don't write China. How do you write Russia in Hindi?
Rus.
Rus.
Yes. Yes. What is the connection between Rus and Russia? So you see,
I don't.
it is, that's why I said it's not exactly transliteration, it's a translation of the country names. So when you translate country names, it's very similar to transliteration, but sometimes you have different names. So what is happening here? How would you know one-to-one? You see the number of characters are same. In Peru, there are 4 characters, and here also there are 4 characters. So you say there may be one-to-one mapping. You can assume. Similarly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again, one-to-one mapping. So Peru and Uruguay, you are pretty sure that yeah, there is very one-to-one mapping. Yes. But Brazil, you are not very sure. But you say it will be resembling that. And you know, okay, this is A, you have established this is A. So that means it is ending with something. So actually, this is Brasilia. This is Brasilia. This is Brasilia. Okay. So you say, okay, it is Brazil, maybe some other characters are appended here. So but there are other things you get. For example, Uruguay has a U, right? And you get a U here. You get a U here. Okay. So Peru and Uruguay, you can take help. And similarly, you get an A, you get an A. Okay. And then you can say, okay, this character is there, but might be L because the first, there is R here and so on. So here also you have to make some guess, but finally it comes out to be Colombia. But yeah, it's a bit more about linguistics that yes, when you do translation of countries, you don't do like exactly translate. Sometimes it may be different.
So the second last character in Colombia and Brazil, is it I or Y? Is it
Yeah, so that is
translated?
again a good question. This is a good question. So what is happening here? Both I and Y, they get mapped to the same character. They get mapped to the same character. Okay. And actually, why is that? Because Colombia, so it will be like Colombia. So that is same as Y. So in this language, Y and I might have the same representation in this language. So that is very much possible. And they have similar sound, right? Y and I, Colombia, Colombia. And that happens a lot with many languages. Yeah. So for I, you get the same character, and Y, you get the same character. You see, for example, when you transliterate, say Sanskrit has a very good thing that there's a one-to-one correspondence between what you speak and what you write. There's a one-to-one correspondence. So when you transliterate, there are many ways you can do. For example, I'll just ask you this much. Suppose this is Sanskrit. How would you transliterate in English? Suppose this is in Sanskrit. How would you transliterate into English? Should be simple.
Lotus.
What is the usual thing that will come to your mind? Yeah.
Lotus.
I'm not saying translation, transliteration.
Sir,
Kamal,
we
KAMAL.
map them to KML and insert.
KAMAL. We can
Yeah.
also do
If it was in
CAMAL.
if it was in Hindi, if it is in Hindi, how would you translate it? If it was in Hindi. Same thing?
Yes, a word mapping.
Okay. No, that's wrong. That's wrong. So you see, in Sanskrit, the way it is written is the same way as it is spoken. So ka ma la. So this has this a kamala. So it should have an a at the end. If it was kamal in Sanskrit, you have to write it like this: kamal within halant. Okay, but this does not hold to in Hindi. In Hindi, you will write kamal. So when you say kamal, you will still write as kamal without a halant. You don't have to write halant. So this is something called schwa deletion. And this is the main difference between transliteration for in Hindi and Sanskrit. In Sanskrit, you have to just directly do the mapping. Very easy. So you know, okay, la is la, ma is ma, independent of whether it is at the end of the word or in the beginning of the word. But in Hindi, you have to see whether it is at the end of the word. At the end of the word, if it is something like la, ma, you remove that a from the transliteration. And we are very much used to writing for Hindi, so that is normal what you said. So you said there should be kamal. That is perfectly fine for Hindi, but for Sanskrit, you have to write it as it is. Okay. Now, how would you do something like kata? How would you transliterate that? Kata. Normally, how would you do? Don't worry about giving the correct answer. Normally, how would you do?
Sir, TA.
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 So yeah, that TA. Is that what you mean? TA.
Yes.
Okay. So now you see there is a problem because both ta and ta are mapping to the same phoneme. So generally, when we design transliteration schemes, we try to avoid that. So we would have a separate mapping for ta and ta. So suppose I have a simple phonetic scheme, what I may do, say ta is small t and ta is capital T. And that may be fine. That which one way I can do it. I can say, okay, I will not use capital letters for anything, but I will use capital letters for something like that. So there are various schemes people have defined. And if you want to look into that, so for Hindi, for example, some very well-known schemes are, say, WX notation for Hindi, also used for Sanskrit. Okay, but for Sanskrit, a very popular notation also came up, that was SLP1, Sanskrit Library Phonetic Scheme. But for if you're working with languages like Hindi, Telugu, Tamil, you might need to know a bit about this transliteration notations and all. So yeah, so generally there are various notations for that. And if you have any questions, we can take up. But I just gave you just told you very briefly about the problems that you might have while you're working with other languages. Okay, sure. So much for the quick quiz. Okay, so now I will talk about neural language models. And this I have taken, so you can read more about it from this SLP 3 chapter 9. So that is a new chapter that was not in the second edition. And many of the slides that I have taken are adapted from CS2 to 4i. And that's what you will see. I will talk about deep learning, and some material is also from the deep learning book. So yeah. Okay, so you know language modeling, right? And what is language modeling? So it does the task of predicting what is the word that would come next after a sequence. So suppose you have a sequence, the students opened there, and you have all these words: books, laptops, exams, minds, all these questions. These are possible words. You have to choose one word, right? So you have to compute the probability of a sentence or a sequence of words. But more fundamentally, what language modeling does, it computes the probability of an upcoming word. So actually, this is more fundamental. This can be used to derive this. So you generally derive the probability of a sentence by making use of this formula. That, okay, how do I got the probability of a next word given the previous words? So you just do the chain rule of probability, and that will give you this probability of a sequence from here. So now this was clear in the lectures that, yeah, this is how you define the language model. Probability of a word given whatever you have seen before. Probability of an upcoming word. Now, what are the applications where this is used? What are some of the applications where this is very, very helpful?
The auto completion of a sentence.
Yeah, auto completion.
Well,
Yes. Huh? See what happens in auto completion. Suppose you have to give options, you can give some high probability words. You know whatever the user has typed till now, and user just keeps the cursor there, and you will see the highest probability words next. Yes, that's what you do. What are the other applications?
Spelling correction of a word.
Yes, spelling correction of a word. Yes, very good. Yeah, I did not give you those lectures. Yeah,
Search prediction.
If you are interested about how to use language modeling for spelling correction, there are other lectures that I have not given you. So the missing lectures from here. So you may go through that. Now, yeah, there was a third answer. What was that?
Search predictions.
Search predictions. What do you mean?
Like on Sir Google, when we type something, it try to predict the most relevant thing that might come under that thing. Meaning,
No,
like,
do you mean auto completion only? That you are typing a query and it tells you, okay, what might be your query.
so, but it is different than that. It tries to also use some more things along with that auto completion. In auto completion, we are only cross checking with the words that are already there, but in the search prediction we generally use what is the most frequent searches currently being happening at that locating areas or something like that.
Sure. So you are just saying a generalization of that. That is fine. That is all right. You can do language modelings for actually all sorts of things. Okay. So, so for example, these are the most some of the things that come to mind, like predictive typing, predicting what is the next word you want to type. Speech recognition was one of the first thing for which language models were used. So you are speaking and you want to convert that to text, and that is where language models are so important. That what is the sentence that the person might have spoken, and there if you have many probabilities. For example, I may say ice cream, yes, and you might hear as I scream versus ice cream. Now, which one has a higher probability? Yes, so things like that. Handwriting recognition. Yes, again, somebody has written in handwriting, you have to do OCR and then you have to come up with the actual text. But how likely is the text? That's what is told by language models. So they are very similar applications. They are with different modalities. Like you don't even work with text. This is on speech. This is on images, right? Handwriting are images. But finally, it is all about some language or some text that is being spoken or that is being written by handwriting. And you have to come back and say, okay, what is the actual text that is being spoken or what is the text that is being written? Now, you will use the acoustic models for ASR. You will use the OCR models or computer vision algorithms for this handwriting. But finally, you get an output. But how likely is that output? That is where a language model is very important. So language models are essential parts of both of these: speech recognition, OCR, or handwriting recognition. And spelling grammar correction is always there. And then even things like, I have just given an example, authorship identification. What does it mean? How would you use language model for authorship identification?
Predicting the words a user generally uses in his scripts.
Yeah, you might have seen that in some of the movies. For example, you are seeing the word spoken by a person, so it happens in, so it's, yeah, and you just say, okay, oh, that uh, he he did not used to speak these words, so is that person an imposter? Yes. So idea is that a person has a very specific language model, the way a person speaks or writes. Now, given a text, you can know whether it is written by. So let's make it very, very formal. Let's say there are two people. Give me two famous authors. Give me names of two famous authors.
So Shakespeare.
Okay. And
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
okay. Fine. Let's say there are two famous writers. And now you are given a piece of text. Okay. And it is told it is written by one of them. But you are not told who wrote that. How would you determine whether it was written by one or two? How would you know that? Or can you now write an algorithm to tell, okay, who wrote that?
So we will require the previous works.
Let's say you have the previous works, very good. You require the previous works, right? Right. So you have all the previous works of both the authors. Complete works are available. Now, assuming this is not there, this piece is not there, you cannot do it direct method. So let's say this piece was not there in any of these, but it is written by one of these. Then.
Sir, we can use the frequent words those authors are going used to be using in their writings, and those we can match here if the highest match with.
No, see, you have the intuition. Now, why don't you formally do it in using language models? You have done language models. So now, can you not describe that using language models?
So using probability, we can check which word has higher probability in occurring in which of the works. Like if a word is
No,
given,
you
then
see,
we
that
can.
is good. That is good. That is good. But more formal. I want some more formal answer. Yeah, on track. Both of you have given good reasoning, good intuitions.
So we
more
can use
formal.
something like a similarity matrix. Like there are two words which has similar meanings, but author one predict something else and author two predict something else. So by the words we are using,
Very
we
good.
can map it.
But formalize that. Formalize that further. You're all
Sir,
on track.
we'll train two language models, one on Shakespeare corpus and one on
LM1,
Arthur Conan
LM2.
Doyle.
Yes. Yes.
And we'll
Now.
find the probability of the sentence, the test sentences, and on both the models and check which are the highest.
And so what will you compute? I also gave you the measure. What will you compute?
Perplexity.
Very good. You are there. Okay. So what you will do, very simple. So now you know language models. So what you will do, I learn a language model LM1 from Shakespeare and LM2 from Arthur. And I have two language models, LM1 and LM2. Now I have this corpus or some sentences, right, that I do not know who wrote. So what I will do, I will use language model 1 first and compute what is the perplexity of this corpus as per language model 1. Then I will use language model 2, perplexity of language model, perplexity of this text as per language model 2. Now what will be your answer? You got these two values.
So the one having higher perplexity will be.
Yes. So you will say, okay, so take the argmin of PLM1 and PLM2. That's all. That's all. You see how easy is that? So you just have two language models, just get the perplexity of the test set, and you get the answer. And keep that in mind. So this is a very interesting way in which language models can be used for classification algorithm for doing a classification. If you know language models, you can do classification. So suppose you do classification between sports and politics. So what you do, you take a lot of corpus on sports, compute language model for sports, similarly for health or whatever, politics, and then given a new piece of text, you just compute the perplexity as per the different language models. And that will tell you, okay, what is the class? So you see that language models itself can be used for classification problems. So that is why I kept this example. Okay. Okay. So n-gram language models, if you have doubts, you can tell. I'm just showing it if you have doubts. So unigram is like single word, bigrams are 2 words, trigram 4 grams. And how do you compute the probabilities? For example, if you want to compute probability of an n-gram. So that is probability of a word given the previous n minus 1 words. Yes. And how do you do that? Probability of these n words together divided by probability of these n minus 1 words together, and you estimate that using their counts. So that is nothing but the counts. Number of times you see this n gram together divided by number of times you see this n minus 1 gram together. Right? And this you get from the corpus directly. And that was very, very simple. You just compute. So if you have bigram, you will simply compute probability of x2 given x1. So how many times count x1, x2 divide by count of x1. So very easy. So you can compute from a corpus. Now, suppose we are doing a 4-gram language model. In 4-gram, what does that mean? You are taking the previous 3 words and predicting the 4th word. Yes, condition on the previous 3 words. So probability of W given students opened there would be probability count of students opened there, W divided by count of students opened there. And now, for example, students opened there occurred 1,000 times. Students opened their books occurred 400 times. The probability of books coming after students opened there would be 0.4. And students opened their exams occurred 100 times. So this would be 0.2. Right? Okay, simple calculations. So now, if you only have this much evidence, okay, forget this, forget which word you would predict here. Students opened there. Which word would have the high probability? If you have this information from your data.
Books.
You can books. So books has a high probability. Students open their books has a high probability. So students open their book more number of times than they open their exams, right? So yeah, that is fine. So books has a high probability. But now that's an interesting question. But what was the context? As the proctor started the clock. Now, because you are using a 4-gram language model, that means you can only use the previous 3 words for predicting the 4th word. There is no way you can use the context of proctor. Why can't you use this context up to proctor? What is the problem? Why can't I use up to proctor?
So we need to increase our gram, like 7 gram something.
Yeah. 4 is only 4. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 gram.
Yes, sir.
9 gram. Right. So what is the problem? It's just 4 to 9. What is the problem?
The proctor started the clock, the students opened there. This kind of sentence would be now become rare if you consider 9 gram kind of sentences.
Yeah, very good. So first of all, it will be very rare to find exactly same sentence if you take 9 gram. Yes, the first problem is rare. As you take on taking larger n-grams, you will get rare sentences that will occur maybe once in the whole corpus. But apart from that, let's say they are rare. But apart from being rare, what is the other issue? There's another very something much more something that is much more problematic. So there is rare thing, and let's say for rare things you can do smoothing. So let's say I will do smoothing some way, like you did unigram prior, you can generalize that. Say, if 9 gram is not there, you take the 8 gram probability. If 8 gram is not there, you take 7 gram probability, and so on. Okay. So rarity you can try by some way. Okay? But what is the other problem?
Computationally not
There
efficient.
can be even more lengthy sentences. So just increasing the grams will not suffice.
I can use 20 gram, let's say 20 gram, maybe sufficient, let's say, for most of the cases.
Computation problems.
What computation problems? You may have a lot of computers and you may do the computations. If that works, I mean, if that would work, you would go for that, right?
So what if we have shorter sentences, like shorter than the gram we are taking? So the meaning of the sentence, the other sentence will be different, and the one with the focus word will.
Sure. So yeah, that is fine. That is fine. So you can, yeah, you may have problems with shorter sentence, fine. But there is one problem. Like, what is the computational problem you are saying? Let's say 9 gram. What is the computational problem? What do you mean by computational problem? So let's talk in terms of parameters. How many parameters you have to store if you are using a 9 gram? How many parameters?
Eight parameters.
How many? 8. Okay, let me then go to more basic. So in a unigram language model, suppose you have learned a unigram language model from a corpus. How many parameters have you learned?
So number of words in the vocabulary.
One.
Yes. So you have V parameters. If you have learned a bigram language model, how many parameters have you learned?
So V squared, sir.
Okay. Now, if you have learned a 4-gram language model, how many parameters?
V raised to power 4.
Okay. Now, if you are learning a 9, I don't have to ask you again, V to the power 9. Yes, you get that. Now, what is the range of V generally? We have taken some typical ranges like 500,000. Now think about that. Think about that for 9 gram. Yeah. Can't store that. You can't store that. So people generally don't go beyond 4 gram or 5 gram. Yeah, it's difficult to even store those 4 gram, 5 gram. But yeah, some way because many of these are sparse and you can use some methods for storing sparse things. So you may be able to store these. But yeah, 9 becomes infeasible of it. So yeah, so as you keep on increasing in 1 gram, your parameters increase like exponentially. So it's an exponential increase in parameters. So that's why you don't go beyond 4. Yes, generally 4 is good. And that is the reason you cannot use the larger context. And other things are there, of course, becomes rare, sparse, and yeah. So you have the storage problem, and as you increase your n, your model size is increasing. You have more and more parameters as you increase your n. So now, can I replace that with something like a neural model? Can I use a neural model instead? Right now, I'm just saying let's use a fixed window. Let's not worry about using everything. Let's use a fixed window neural model. How would I do that?
So for the number
So
of parameters, shouldn't it be one less, like what you wrote? Like for unigram, shouldn't it be number of words in vocabulary -1, because the probability for that last word we can find it out from by doing 1 minus the probability of the other words.
Okay, fine, sure. Fine, sure. I have not taken care of that constant, but yeah, why you see you are storing things. So if you want to store v-1 parameters, I'm not saying how many independent things are there. You want to store v-1 things, and let's say, okay, if you want to compute probability for this word, you do 1 minus probability for everything else. Okay, that will be too much computation at runtime. So you would store that also. Okay, yeah, of course, independent things are v-1, but you have to store that one also. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So let's think. I want to use a neural language model. Okay, I want to get away with all this n-gram language model, and let's say I use a neural language model. How do I start? How do I start? And I say I have to use a fixed window. Let's say I use the previous 4 words the students opened there and want to predict the next word. How will I do that? And this was actually taught first time by one of the persons whom all of you know. So this was actually taught in 2003 by none other than Bengio. Okay, so this was a 2003 paper by Bengio. So how do I use a fixed window neural language model? Is that okay? I want to use a neural language model.
We might input the word embeddings of the last 4 tokens and then predict the output vocabulary word.
Yes, why not? Why not? So remember last time I said you can use embeddings for even generation. Yes, and I said, but to get to that point, I need to tell you more. And what I had to tell you more was nothing but this language modeling. Okay, so now, how would you use language modeling? So you say, okay, I know the embeddings for these words. The students opened there. So it's a 4D. D, it's a D-dimensional embedding. So it's a 4D input. Right. It's an input. And I want to predict the next word. How next? What should I do next? I have my input. I have my input layer. I want to predict the next word. What should I do?
The output would be a D-dimensional word.
Okay, I'll come back. Sure. It's a question mark. All of you know neural networks, right? At least the simple multi-layer perceptron.
So we'll have a hidden layer in between. One or more hidden layers.
You don't know neural network, yes. Hidden layer, yes. Hidden layer. Let's say X dimension.
And sir, multiplying that 4D vector with a weight matrix in which we give weights to each row.
Yeah. Let's say W1. So you will do something like, suppose this is X. So Wx plus P, and take a nonlinearity, sigmoid or whatever. That will be your hidden layer. This is what you have in the hidden layer. Okay. And then you will pass it through another matrix, say U. Whatever plus C. Yes. And that is what you will get at your output. Something like that. No. Hidden layer dimensions you choose like by some parameter, optimization, hyperparameter tuning, and so on. And there's a match. Input dimension is given. What determines your output layer dimension?
So the number of words that are there in the vocabulary.
Yes, because you can think of it as a simple classification problem, right? So I say, okay, I am predicting the next word. So it is as if I am trying to classify into one of those words in my vocabulary. So what will be the dimension? It will be V. It will be not D dimension, it will be V dimension. So I have V dimension output. So I have this output that is of V dimension. I choose my U accordingly, right? It's in my hand what is the dimensions I have to choose so that all dimensions match. Right? So we can do that. So I choose a dimension such that at output I have V dimension in the output. And I use loss function, standard loss function. What is that? Binary cross entropy. Oh, sorry, not binary. Cross entropy loss. Okay, cross entropy loss. So how do I train it? How do I
So
train my
we
model?
provide 4 windows of words of size 4, and we train it and we compute the loss, and accordingly we perform gradient descent algorithm in order to update the weights, and that is how it goes on.
Yeah, so it's a standard thing. Standard thing, we know that. So that's what. So this is a standard thing. So now, once I have gone to this architecture and everything else is standard. So then I say, okay, and I don't even need any annotated data. I don't need, just like an n-gram language model, I do not need any annotated data. I can just use a large corpus and do that. Similarly, this neural language model also, I can take a large corpus, I can create these windows, 4 words in the next word, 4 words in the next word, and keep on doing this, training this language model. And at the end, I will have all my 2 matrices trained, W and U, and the bias weights are trained. And at test time, I am given the previous words. I can predict the probability of the next word. I can get the probability distribution by taking the softmax at the output layer, right? So do I have a language model now? Just a simple neural language model. So I just concatenate the 4 embeddings, pass it through W and then say to U, and I get a probability distribution. Okay. So and at test time, I can either sample or choose the max, whatever is as per my application. I can do that. I can compute perplexities. I can compute what is the probability of the next word as per my neural language model. And I can use that to compute perplexity on test set. So whatever I could do with the n-gram language model, I can do with the fixed window neural language model. Any problems there? So what is the advantage of this over an n-gram language model? Can you tell me at least one advantage?
We need less storage in this case. If we try
Oh yes.
to
How much
increase the size
storage?
of
How
the
much
window,
storage do you need? How
sir,
much storage do you need?
only need to store the weight matrix, the W matrix.
So that is how much? 4D times H.
4D cross, yes.
Plus H cross W or V, sorry. H cross V. Right? That's all. That's all. 4D times H plus H cross V. So it's order V. It's order V. So while your n-gram language models are order V to the power n, whatever is the n-gram language model. So you space is reduced drastically. It's just linear in terms of your vocabulary. And linear also in n-gram, right? Because if you increase this 4 gram to 5 gram, I mean 4 words to 5 words, this will change 4D to 5D.
Hello, sir.
Okay, sorry. I think there was some problem with the internet connection at my end.
Yes, sir.
So I was asking what was the advantage over n-gram language model? One is this storage. Storage issue is solved. You have linear, it's linear in the vocabulary size. Okay, but what is the issue with this? Is there any issue remaining with this fixed window neural language model?
Sir, the sequence is the sequence information is not exactly encoded here.
Why? You are concatenating. So this is in the sequence. So you know this is the fourth previous word, third previous word, second previous word, and just the previous word. So you put them in the sequence. There are 4 words. And then the weights will be learned accordingly, right? They will have different set of weights. So if you would have, for instance, if you would have taken the average embedding of these 4 words, then your point was valid. Then we would have missed the sequence information. But we are concatenating the embeddings. So we have preserved the sequence information. So what is the problem with this?
Sir, model needs to
Can't
be
think even a
updated
single.
as vocabulary changes.
No, don't worry about it. That is there everywhere. That is a universal problem. So yeah, we just close our eyes and we forget that. So yeah, that problem can never be solved. Something that you can easily think. Don't you see something about this name fixed window? The window has to be fixed a priori, right? So I can't take indefinite length. I can only take, say, 4 words, 5 words, 6 words. I have to define that. And once I've defined that, I can't go beyond that. I can't go beyond that. I can't use more context than that. And that is a problem. So, and if I increase my window length, the parameters are going to increase. Right? Even if they are increasing linearly, they are increasing. Yes, they are increasing. So that is one problem. There is one very specific problem with this. That is also there with the n-gram language model. But yeah, with this becomes more problematic. For example, let's say, think about a sentence. Say, Sachin Tendulkar will. Okay, and we have a blank. Next word is blank. And you want to predict. What would you predict? The next word.
Sir, here it will be like more deterministic, as in we are predicting the word with the max probability. Whereas,
Yeah, that is fine. I'm just saying, so it will be something like word like play or so on. Let's say word like play. Yes. And the weights would depend on Will, Tendulkar, and Sachin, right? But you see, here this is the last word. And let's say there is something here. So this is x4, x3, x2, x1. There are 4 words. And you see, your weights are different for each of these. Will have different set of weights. Tendulkar has a different set of weights. So all these words x1, x2, x3, x4 have different set of weights. Because a 4D cross H matrix, it's a 4D cross H matrix. Are you able to visualize that? Or do I need to just use a new page? Okay. So your matrix from input to hidden, it's a 4D cross H matrix. Okay, and what it means is that you have different set of weights for x1, x2, x3, x4. And let's say this Sachin Tendulkar will. Let's say these are the 3 words. And you have to predict the next word. And let's say this word is anything. And you want to predict the next word. And you have learned that. And you know, okay, from Will, some weights will go from Will, some weights will go from Tendulkar, some weights will go from Sachin. And you see they are disjoint weights. They're all disjoint weights. They are, so they're all, think of these are all D cross H matrices. And we have no connection between these. Right? They are all independent weights. Now, so each of them are making some contribution when they get some input. They are making some contribution. Now, what happens if you get a sentence like this? Sachin Tendulkar will surely. And again, you may want to predict play. Will surely play. So what happened just by adding an adverb, surely? You just added an adverb. And that is like very common. You add in an adverb. Immediately your whole equation changes. Now Will goes with weights corresponding to x3. Tendulkar goes with weights corresponding to x2. And Sachin goes with weight corresponding to x1. But you see, what you had learned were when Sachin was with x2, Tendulkar was with x3, and Will was with x4, will predict play. Right? And that learning will not help you when you get the word surely in between. Because now the complete weights are, they're changed. Because Will is coming at the place of Tendulkar and surely is coming. And let's say training, you never saw something like that. You never saw something like, okay, surely can come in between. And your whole training has gone topsy-turvy. And this is a very specific problem with using fixed window language models. Okay, even with n-gram language models, that is a problem. So yeah, let me just ask, did you understand the problem that I was trying to mention? So for example, learning, what is it learning? It is learning something like, okay, if the previous word is will, so this matrix will learn, for example, the next word would be more like the root form of the word play, and not play will have a higher probability, and something like played. Played will have a lower probability. Played will have a lower probability because after will you cannot have past tense verb, right? And things like that it is learning. Okay, what kind of words will have high probability? What kinds of words will have low probability? And if it sees, okay, at Sachin at some point, okay, say okay, if this is here, any cricketer is here, you get a high probability for play if it is coming in x2 position or x3 position and so on. You have a high probability for play, low probability for these words. So that kind of thing you are learning in these matrices. But if you get words in between, everything changes. And even learning is difficult. So something like these x1 and x2 are being multiplied by completely different weights in W. And there's no symmetry in how they are being processed. And so what I'm saying, these two weights are very different, D cross H, D cross H. They are very different weights and they have no connection with each other. And that creates a problem. So two problems. One is the window that we say it's too small. You can never take sufficiently large window. Second is different words are being multiplied by completely different set of weights and that have no connection. And that can create problem if you have an input that has more words in between. Suddenly by adverb, adjectives have come in between. And that will create problem in the final prediction. So then we go forward, okay, how do I take care of these problems? How do I take care of both of these problems? That, okay, I want to go away with my fixed window. And I also want to avoid that, okay, all the words are being applied with different set of words. So how do I get rid of these two problems? Are both the problems clear to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So how do I get rid of these problems? How do I get rid of these problems? That is where we go to these recurrent neural networks that are like one of the first architecture that did wonders for NLP. So we go to recurrent neural networks. It is still not showing on my screen. Yeah. So what are you doing here? You are saying, okay, I am processing the input in a sequence. Fine. That is what I was doing earlier. They were in the sequence. But the thing that is different is that I'm not doing some concatenation and all. I'm just saying, okay, I'll use the input, produce some hidden state, but I will keep on producing hidden state at every point. So at x2, I will again produce a hidden state, say h2. At x3, I'll again produce a hidden state. x4, I will again produce a hidden state, and I will keep on doing that for any number of words that I see. And what is important is that I apply the same weights again and again. I don't learn new weights depending on the length of my input. My number of weights do not change. So I'm actually using only 3 weights. I am going from input to hidden, say matrix like U, hidden to hidden, W, and hidden to output, say V. Okay, I'll use this UVW, but I have taken slides at various sources and they will use different notations. Okay, so don't worry about that. Just keep your notations. You can use UVW or whatever you feel comfortable. Input to hidden. So this I'm calling input to hidden. W is hidden to hidden. And V is hidden to output. Okay. And the core idea is that you apply the weights repeatedly. You don't care about the sequence. You say, okay, I don't care how long your sequence is. I will keep on applying these weights again and again and get my predictions, my outputs. Okay, how exactly is that done? Okay. So what is happening? So you can visualize in RNN. So a simple neural network. We also call that a vanilla neural network. How do you say? You have an input and X, you have a hidden state, and you have an output, Y. That is simple neural network, right? So the only thing that changes is that you have a recurrence now. You have a recurrence. You're applying a formula again and again and again. Nothing else. So that's That's all happens. So let's see what is the forward propagation. In the activation, you can assume some tanh. Why don't you tell me what will be the activation? Okay. So at input, I have x1, x2, x3, any sequence up to some say xt. Yes. And I'm producing some hidden states, h1, h2, up to ht. And from hidden states, I'm producing some outputs, say y1 up to yt. What is my forward propagation going to be? So how do I get, say h1? How do I get h1? Input is given to me. Let's say the other embeddings, say the embeddings here, right? D-dimension embeddings.
So tan h of W into x1 plus some bias matrix, bias vector.
Very good. So this is what you used to do in what? In your neural network. Right?
Yes, sir.
So you get H1
Yes,
like
sir.
this, and then you apply your same thing, right? You can apply your V transpose this plus some C, another bias term. V transpose tan H of Wx1 plus V plus some C, right? And that gives you your output. Maybe you do softmax inside here or after that. That is all you used to do in your multi-layer perceptron. You can have multiple hidden layers, of course, but let's say you have a single hidden layer. Is that fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now tell me, how would you compute H2? You have again X2 with D dimension. How would you compute H2?
So WH1 plus some W dash X2 plus some bias there.
Okay, so you are saying, okay, there are two things now. You take hidden state 1 also as input, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. So what you are saying, for computing H1, H2, I take both H1 and X2 as input. Okay, I take
So
both of these.
X1, I think U should be multiplied because input weight matrix we were considering as U. And
Sure. Thanks for reminding. UX1. Okay. So how would I get H2? I have a weight matrix, a W here and U here. So that will be tan H of UX2 plus WH1 plus bias term. And once you get H2, it is easy. So you just do V transpose H2 plus C, something like that. And then you may do a softmax over that. Yes. Okay. Now, how do I get H3? I take H2 and X3 as input. Sure. And the matrices remain the same. This is W, this is U. Same matrices again. So can I write a generic formulation?
Yes, sir.
What will be that? HT is sigmoid or say tan H, whatever. Depends on HT minus 1 and XT. And the matrices are U and W.
so
So
tan
W,
H of U.
H,
So U should be there, I guess.
yeah, UXT plus WST minus 1 plus B. Is that fine?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then how do I go from here to yt is simple. So yt is c plus v times ht, and you may do a soft mix. Oh, that is so easy. That is so easy. This is all your forward propagation edge. Anyone who can't visualize this, what is happening? You can actually, if you have difficulty visualizing, you can think of it again as a simple multi-layer perceptron. You can think of it as if now you have a concatenation of, you're concatenating ht minus 1 and xt in your input. They are your input, and you are passing it to get your ht. And this matrix is nothing but w concatenate with u. They are actually separate parameters. You can think of it as if you are concatenating ht minus 1 and xt, putting these two different matrices and getting ht. And from ht, you are getting your yt. It's as simple as that if you know your simple multi-layer perceptron. Nothing else. And you get your yt here, and you can do your loss computation and back propagation, everything. But yeah, we generally show it like that, that ht minus 1 is here, xt is here, and you use these two with different weight matrices to get this ht. Okay, but if you want, you can also visualize it as if you are concatenating these two, and you have these two matrices together. You can call it a single matrix, that is a concatenation of these two. Okay, so yeah, this is all that happens. So you have 3 weight matrices to learn. If you just forget the bias, you have V, W, and U. 3 weight matrices that you have to learn. Now, what are the dimensions of each? What is the dimension of U? What is the dimension of U? This matrix.
H cross D.
Yeah, H cross D. Fine. What is the dimension of W?
Cross H.
H cross H.
H cross H. And V?
V cross H.
D cross H.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I've used V twice. Yeah, H cross V. Let's say I use this. Okay, fine. H cross V. Fine. So these are all your matrices, and that's all. That's all you need for your language model. And once you have that, now you don't care how much long your sequence is and how many what is the previous, how much previous context you have to see. The same weights are being applied again and again. Okay, so even if you have words in between, you're applying the same weights again. So there's no differential treatment being made if inside your input some words are being some words pop up in between. So yeah, so you have, I'll just show that once. So you have this update equation that we saw, wst minus 1 plus uxt plus b, and yeah, then st is tan h of this. Output is c plus vht, and y hat t, that is the prediction. Is the prediction is softmax of OT, and from there you compute your loss, right? And loss function, you can just take the minus log probability of the correct, is the correct class. Yes, and that, yeah. So you minus log probability of correct class, that is nothing but cross entropy loss. And you sum over all the losses, and that becomes your loss. Now, the only thing that happens differently in backpropagation is that you have to do backpropagation through time. That is, you have to go backwards and do propagation. And this particular formula is called backpropagation through time. Okay. So actually, yeah, once I had taken deep learning course and I had done this derivation also, backpropagation through time. It's just, yeah, it takes a bit more time. I'm just showing you the image that I have from that course. So yeah, there were like quite a few derivation that we do for backpropagation through time. So what happens is that I'll just tell you what is the problem. What happens here? The problem happens is that you have the loss computed at every point. Let's say computed loss at this point. Okay, let's say at this point. Now you want to know the derivation of, because you have to update your parameters, you have to compute all the loss for all the parameters. So what is the DL over say DW? Okay, you have to do that. But the problem is the W is at every point. The same W is at every point. And for the loss at this point, all these W's will participate. All these W's will have contribution towards this loss. So when you have to backprop, you have to find out contribution of each of the W towards this loss, because you're applying the same weight again and again. And that becomes a bit more cumbersome. But yeah, it is doable. You can actually derive that if you do some, sit and do that, you can derive that. But yeah, that's all is the problem. So similarly, this DL over DU happens over all the time steps. So you have to add over all the time steps. So this is the only difficulty. And if you were actually doing a deep learning course, I would have done that. And if actually people are interested, I can even do that, but just that it will take time. So I'm just saying this is backpropagation through time. This is slightly different than backpropagation. And yeah, this is all you need to know right now. So there is a way you can do backpropagation. So now what happens now with the RNN language model? It looks like this. So now you have the inputs, say the students open there. They are all embeddings you are feeding. See, sometimes just for notation, as I was saying, I have taken slides from various places, I think mostly from CS24N. And they have used quite a few notations, different notations. So there they are saying WH. So this is our W. This W is nothing but our U. And this U is nothing but our V. Okay. So, so what is happening? You are feeding the embeddings as the input. And you are feeding the initial state. So what I did not, tell you that even for computing H1, we using the same formula. So even H1 was tan H of WH0 plus U of X1 plus B. And your question may be, okay, where is this H0 coming from? So H0 is something that you can either say some random initialization or something like a zero vector. You can say all dimensions are zero. So that is effectively same as not putting H0 at all, but it is there. So you may do some random vectors, you may do zero initialization, you can do something else also, depending on your application. They will say, okay, if in some cases you have to do something else. But by default, it can be a zero vector, and it will boil down to the same equation that we wrote. Okay. So you get your H1 and apply the same formula again, you get your H2 and H3 and so on. And whenever you have to predict your final word in vocabulary, you take that H and apply that softmax of V times HT plus one bias, whatever name you give, and get a probability distribution like you do always. And from this probability distribution, if you are actually doing at the test time, you can sample words. If you're at training time, you can do cross entropy loss and compute error or whatever. Okay. So the only difference between a neural language model, if you understood, and an RNN language model is that you're not doing any concatenation. There is no concatenation. We are applying it in sequence for all the words. So there is no, there is nothing like I have to use that many window and that long window. There's no concept of a fixed length window. You can use as long a window as you want. I mean, there's no window at all. You have to just process in sequence. And the weights number of parameters are independent of the sequence length. Okay, so yeah, same number of parameters that we counted, U, V, and W. That parameters you have to learn, and that you do by your training. Okay. If somebody still has a problem about RNN, I'll just give that simple example. So think about a simple task of predicting next character. Okay. Suppose you're building an RNN to predict the next character, and suppose you have only 4 characters: H, E, L, and O. Okay. Suppose you have only these 4 characters. So here you are doing some training, and you have this word hello, right? Hello, and you are feeding H, E, L at the input. How are you feeding it? You're just feeding as the one hot. So H is 1000, E is 0100, L is 0010, again L 0010. You're feeding them as one hot vectors. And you compute your hidden layers, and you get the output. Okay. And in the output, you if you are doing the training, you can simply take the minus log probability of the correct class. What is the correct class after H? E. So you take the correct probability of this class, and similarly here, and so on. This is minus 1.0. How will this come? How will this give me a probability? At L, it is minus 1.0.
So we are taking the softmax, so we are raising it to the exponent. So it will always be positive.
So I hope everyone is aware of that. You have to do a softmax of that. Softmax, get the probabilities, and you do a minus log probability. Yeah, if anybody has a question, you can tell and ask. Don't think that I'm assuming you would know things. I just said that you would. I assume that you know at least what a simple neural network is. Okay, but from that simple neural network, how do you go to RNN is what I am telling you. Okay, so if you have question there, please ask now. Otherwise, I'll assume it's actually very quite straightforward. But if you have questions, you should use this time to ask. Yeah.
Sir, the probabilities that we get upon applying softmax at the output layer, they don't add up to 1, right? So how are we going to get that maximum probability, like of the next word being?
Wait. First of all, your first sentence itself, they don't add up to 1. Why do you say that? They add up to 1. If you have some n numbers, x1, some real numbers, x1 to xn, and you say you apply a softmax, what do you mean?
So in the denominator, we take the summation of exponent to the power of all the x, and then in the numerator, we take each of the exponent to the power x.
Do you still say that they don't add up to 1?
No, sir. So within a vector, they add up to 1, but like I'm speaking of the 4 vectors individually that we get at the output layer.
But why do you want them to add up to 1? Because you will compute the loss separately for each of these. Your separate loss being computed.
So like
independent losses.
Like at test time, like so what will happen? That is my question. Like in the test time, when we give the characters one by one, so it is going to predict out the probabilities, right?
See, you have the control of putting this output layer. Where do you want to put the output? Okay, that control is in your hand. So at test time, give me an example. What will be your input? What is your input?
So suppose like suppose A and D. Suppose A and I give as input, and I want
fix these 4 characters only. Fix these 4 characters: H, E, L, O.
So, sir, the output will appear like that output part I'm not getting.
Okay, let's say this is your test time behavior. Okay, let's say your input is HELL. is your input, and you want to predict the next word. Fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What will you do? You will feed HELL here at the input as it is. You will compute the hidden layers. Okay. But you won't use the first three outputs. Okay. There is a little bit of delay.
How
So I
will
have
we know
crossed
that?
the first three outputs.
So how will we know that which, like this is a neural network model, so how will we know what will be the next character that is supposed to come? We'll know that through probabilities, right? Okay, so that vector is having 4 probabilities. Okay. Okay, sir, I got it.
Okay. So now you have only one vector. Okay.
Only one vector, so
So you
it
have
will
only
give
one
the
vector.
individual probabilities. Okay.
Yes.
And we'll take the
And you
maximum.
take, test time, you can take the maximum. If you have classification problem, you take the maximum.
Okay.
Max probability. And if you're doing something like generation where you want to play with things like, well, I want to generate new things, you can do sampling. But in classification, you can just take the max probability from this. Okay, fine. Anyone else has a question?
So from the last vector of the output layer, how we can predict that it is O?
Okay, so what you will do, you take the vector, you take the softmax, right? And you get something. So suppose here, I'm just putting some approximate things. I don't know, 0.7, 0.2, and maybe 0.07.03, something like that. Okay, this will be the probabilities. Now, if you're doing classification, you just want to predict the next word, you will just take the word with the highest probability. That's all. So you will take the fourth one. Now, what does it mean, the fourth one? You have the index mapped already. HELO, so you will put O. You will predict O here. Is that your question? And does that answer?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. If some other word has, some other character has high probability, you'll pick that. As simple as that. Anyone else has a question on RNN? Okay, so I think yeah, this is sufficient for today. I wanted to do a few more things, but that I will do in the next interaction hour. I hope you were able to get some insight on what is RNN, and we will continue from here. And if you have questions, you can ask again in the next class about RNN, read about it. And of course, we will float the new lectures for this week. Okay, so anything else that you want to?
So what's the syllabus for the quiz?
Okay, so for the quizzes, the syllabus, so for all quizzes, classes, syllabus will be whatever has been covered before that week. So if the quiz is next week, whatever has been covered till this week is the syllabus. Okay. So yeah, that is something like a generic answer I can give. So for example, the quiz is next week. So I won't ask things that are the lectures that are being floated today. That would not be there in the quiz. Okay. But whatever has been covered till today, so including this interaction session, this will be there. And including whatever previous things, previous lectures that are uploaded, that will be there. Okay, anything else?
So, what are the instructions which you are supposed to provide us for registering in the contest? the shared task.
Okay, yeah, I think that TAs are going to put that soon. Rajdeep Vishal, are you going to put that on Piazza soon? If you're here. Okay, the TH may not be here, but I think they are going to put that this week itself. So it will come out on Piazza, let's say in a day or two. Okay. And there, if you have some doubts, you can immediately ask on that. Just wait for like 1 or 2 days. They are finalizing it.
Sir, just a small, not a doubt exactly, but sort of in the evaluation of the shared task. Like I'm talking specifically about the task 1. So in that, I just checked the, I mean, it's like too early right now, but still I just checked the leaderboard of that, and the scores were very close. I mean, like if like the position of the team is considered, if only the position is considered, I think that will not be a very good way. I mean, if only the position is considered as one of the
Position would be just
contributing factors.
one of the evaluation criteria. Okay, and we will,
Like instead of
if the position, if there are too many, I mean, teams on the leaderboard, we will say the relative position within the class. Relative position within the class, not on the entire leaderboard. But yeah, that is not the only one. But as it was already mentioned last time, it will be one of the points. Relative position
like,
within the class.
I mean, I was just thinking, I don't know if it's viable or something, but if the instead of the ranking, if the actual metric which was being used for evaluation, if that can be factored into the scoring. I mean,
yeah, we will use that too, but I think ranking will also be required. We will use the ranking also.
Okay, sure. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay then. So then we will meet next week on Tuesday again. Thanks then.